up, people? How you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing Jose Mourinho and that famed Porto side that won the Champions League all those many years ago. Not that far, but you know, we're talking like 20 years or so. So we're going to be discussing his tactics, the 4-3-1-2 system that he used, as well as the defensive shape and style that he would look to try and revert the side into. It's a bit more defensive, a bit more compact, looking to have a bit more of a defensive awareness first before the attacking outlets and looking to try and hit teams on the break. So we will be discussing all of that in this video. If you guys can, before we get any further on into it, hit the like button, please. That would be absolutely great. And I'll make you a deal. If you don't like the video by the end of it, you're welcome to take your like back. That's 100%. But what I can promise is these tactics will blow your goddamn socks off because they are absolutely fire. I am not one to enjoy defensive, shapes and defensive structures and formations and tactics, but these tactics are absolutely incredible. If you are playing online and you're playing, seasons or maybe, Ultimate Team, I would advise you to use these tactics because they are absolutely insane. And as well as, if you do play career mode, like yours truly, go ahead and try them out. You can probably win the league with basically any goddamn team you want. So yes, try them out. Let me know what you would, what your thoughts are, what you would rate them out of 10. That would be great too. And yeah, let's have a look at the tactics. Okay, so taking a look at the base formation, it is going to be a 4-1-2-1-2 or a 4-3-1-2 system. It is also going to be the narrow version of it. So I've made a few tweaks and changes, just slightly move players into the more, correct positions, you could say. I've dropped the DM ever so slightly, and that does give him a bit more of a defensive awareness to his game. I've also, somewhat widened the striker natural positions, but ever so slightly. There's no major real changes to it, or positional changes, I should say. So, it will be 1 goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 1 DM, 2 central midfielders, 1 attacking midfielder, and then, of course, 2 strikers. Okay, so onto the tactics. Now, for this tactical vision, I've set it to kick and rush. You can set it to park the bus, but that's not great. Let's be honest. Kick and rush is a bit more, free-flowing, a bit more attacking, you could say. And to be honest with you guys, it does replicate the attacking side of this Porto team. Looking to get the balls in behind, use Deco very effectively in the hole, just in behind the 2 strikers. And again, you don't always have to go long. You can play it through the midfield if required. And to be honest, Jose and Porto did switch it up from time to time so that they could do that. They would have very progressive ball carriers in the midfield area, or they could go long with the likes of Carvalho whipping in that ball over the top. So I think kick and rush reflects a very accurate Porto team, but again, you can also revert to the park the bus tactic, although I will say the enjoyment level does severely decrease. In terms of the defense and the defensive style, they would look to soak up pressure as well as pressing every now and then on a potential mistake that the opposition did make, but more so looking to keep the structure of the team intact more times than not. If there was a mistake made, it would be caused by the front line, and then they would look to try and transition into a counter-attacking phase of play. The team width is set to a very nice, compact, dense 10. Obviously, you don't want players being, squeezed in between the lines, through balls being played, cutting your team open. It's a very compact system looking to try and break up as much play centrally. So that does mean that the opposition will be funneled out wide. You would expect your goalkeeper, your centre-backs as well to try and deal with those crosses when they are whipped into the box. And of course, that does come into the instructional, tactics. But in terms of what you would expect for the natural team shape, a nice compact central unit. The depth is set to a lower mid-block, set to 35. It does also, change ever so slightly with a more defensive structure, a very, low to deep block at times, but a 35 mid-block, you could say. As for the offense, the builder play is set to long ball, as well as the direct passing is set for the chance creation. Of course, this does go hand in hand with the tactical vision, but again, I think it gets the best out of this team, and more or less reflects and replicates a realistic Porto side. They would often, when the ball was turned over into their possession, they'd look to get those runners in behind. Of course, you did have very strong physical ball playing as well as ball carrying midfielders that could definitely carry the ball, but you want to try and exploit the space that the opposition would then inevitably leave in behind. And more so, I think direct passing gets the best out of what that aspect has to offer, as well as the long ball approach. As for the team width, it's set to a nice compact 35, looking to channel a lot of their attacks down the more central areas of the field, often leaving quite a bit of space for the fullbacks, who would often, break forward and get up and support the attack. It would give them a lot of space in those wider regions. And Again, in terms of their instructions, you'll see what we have in play and stuff, but they wouldn't always break forward. So every now and then you can have a bit more of a shortcoming in terms of if you're looking to have that extra pass into that wider area. But more so, if I'm going to try and, coach you into how to use the system, try and find the midfielders. They do try, get nice and high and support when required. But a lot of your attacks will be down the central areas of the field. As for the players in the box, I've set it to a nice balanced 5. More so, your 2 strikers will be breaking into the box, with the occasional run from the number 10. Of course, that was Deco. He would often run into the box late, making those late great runs, waiting for a potential cross or a cutback. And to be honest, Porto would whip in quite a few crosses back in the day. Jose was a big admirer of the whipped in cross, trying to supply the forwards with attacking opportunities. So you are going to want to try and supply those attackers with the best possible ball. As for the corners and the free kicks, as always, it is set to 4. So, progressing on to the instructions, we'll start off at the back with the goalkeeper, Vitor Baella. I think that's how you pronounce his name, I'm not too sure. But back in the day, there was such a thing as a sweeper keeper, but in this system, with a nice compact unit and a mid to deep block at times, you don't want or require him to be a sweeper keeper. And of course, in 2003, 2004, around that time anyway, it was very rare to find a keeper that would maraud outside of his box. So in order to replicate a very realistic goalkeeping approach for that time and that era, and that team specifically, I've set him to come for crosses as well as have a balanced approach for his saving outside of the box. A more traditional based goalkeeping approach, you could say. For the 2 centre-backs, they are set to their base set of instructions. No major changes or alterations required for either or. So moving on to your left and your right fullbacks, both of them will have the same instructions. Of course, Valente and Paulo Ferreira were very good at supporting the attack, knowing when to stay back, knowing when to compact, and more so you are trying to replicate that type of style and system. So for the attacking runs, I've set both of them to balance, allowing them to sometimes maraud forward, and they do this very effectively. I will say that. I was expecting them to not get forward as much, but because they don't have that extra body in front of them, they feel obliged almost to break forward and try and support the attack. So every now and then you do see them get forward and support in those wider right and left areas. The run type should be set to overlap, of course, creating a lot of the width down each flank. And of course, like I said earlier, because you're looking to try and channel a lot of your attacks more centrally, it does allow for the opposition to try and focus in those central areas and it kind of ignore the wider regions, and that allows for quite a bit of space in those wider channels. Finally, for the defensive positioning, you want them to stick to position, not really requiring them to step up or be out of position or potentially be exposed. As you'll see here for the likes of Valente/Wendell, he's got the same roles and instructions as well. Okay, so looking at the DM, Costinha/Varela. In order to replicate his role, you want him to be the shield, you want him protecting that backline. You don't always require him to get forward. In fact, he very rarely got forward unless they were trying to throw the whole kitchen sink at the opposition. So, in order to replicate his role very effectively, tight mark is set to be on for him. Looking to patrol just in front of that backline, looking to pick up any potential runners or make sure that the opposition players on the edge of the box were very uneasy and didn't have time or space on the ball. In terms of the attacking runs, like I said, he doesn't always break forward, so he's going to be set to stay back while attacking. The interceptions is set to normal. You can go with a bit more of an aggressive approach, but I think normal best suits the system. Of course, if it's set to aggressive, I often find that players are sometimes out of position, and that's never great, especially if you require the likes of the DM to try and protect the back line. So I've gone with a more normal set of interceptions for him. And then finally, the positioning freedom is set to stick to position, with the defensive position set to cover the center. So onto your 2 central midfielders now, Maniche and Alanikev. I think that's how guys, please, F's in the chats. I don't know how to pronounce these men's names, but the point is though, you want to have a very good defensive outlet from them, as well as a somewhat box-to-box approach with, again, a more defensive awareness to their game plan. So for their attacking support, I've told them to both stay back while attacking. If I didn't mention it, they are both set to the same set of instructions. So you don't always want them breaking forward, but every now and then they do tend to support the attack nice and high up the field. But what I've noted with the amount of times trying out the various instructions is, they'll get forward, but when, you know, they're out of possession of the ball, or one of the forwards has it, they'll look to try and keep their shape and look to try and more or less revert into that more central structural approach, which again is very helpful if you do turn the ball over higher up the field. And it does seem to replicate Jose's system very well. In terms of the support on crosses, stay on the edge of the box. Very seldom did the central midfielders break into that attacking area. So you don't really want that happening. It's more or less the front three that did a lot of the attacking and breaking into the box. The interceptions for both is set to normal, and then finally cover the center and then stick to position. Cover the center is going to be essential. You are looking to try and flood the opposition out of those central areas into the more wider channels, and then more naturally, if you are looking to try and overload or double team in those wider areas, you can select either or, the left or the right midfielder, and drag them manually into those wider sections of the field. As you'll see here, for the right midfielder, stay back while attacking, stay on the edge of the box, normal interceptions, cover the center, and then of course stick to position. Onto the likes of Deco. Now, again, a bit more of a defensive awareness to his game, but again, it does allow you to sag off of that opposition backline, pull players out of position every now and then, as well as with the quick counter-attacking breaks that you might look to start, they always have a nice, deeper starting position, looking to gain a bit more pace and looking to run in behind. So he's also going to look to try and help out on the defensive end, looking to drop a bit deeper, sometimes even getting on the ball and driving at the opposition, looking to try and create for the two further forwards. Of course, Deco was well known for his creative role, his running with the ball, his strong physicality with running in possession of the ball. The support on crosses is set to stay on the edge of the box as well, but we do see him as well breaking into that attacking area. Of course, with it being set to 5, your two forwards will more naturally be in those deeper spots in the box, but as well as the number 10 will often also be in and around the box, if not in the box in certain moments. The positioning freedom is set to stick to position. I attempted going with the free roaming role, but it did tend to break the structure on the defensive end quite a bit, and you don't really want that. So stick to position is going to be a more natural approach for the Deco role. And more naturally, if you do have the ball with your number 10, you can look to manually drive out wide, pull players out of position, and then look to try and create from either wider angles or in those little half spaces as well. Finally, onto the interceptions, it's set to aggressive. Now, they do look to try and compact, keep their shape, keep their structure, but force the opposition into making a heavy touch, forcing a heavy pass or a misplaced pass. So you want your front three somewhat pressing every now and then the opposition's backline, forcing those errors. And more so with the aggressive interception set to be on for them, they can look to do this very effectively. So into the dual striker tandem, of course, we had Alberto and McCarthy, or, you know, it could have been somebody else off of the bench. But more so with these roles, one was the more physical, whilst the other one was the guy that ran off of the shoulder of the more physical, now looking to, you know, exploit that space in behind every now and then. So we'll start off on the right-hand side, of course, Roberto. He's set to stay central and be a target player, of course. And I always say this, with a dual striker partnership, you want and require one of them to be the more physical, with the other being the more pacey in certain moments. So you want the likes of Alberto to back into the opposition, link up play higher up the field, even the ability just to hold the ball in those higher regions of the field, waiting for, you know, his teammates to try and support. He can do that job very, very well. The interceptions is set to aggressive, and then finally, the defensive support for both your strikers would be set to come back on defense. And again, this does help with the ability to make those runs in behind, often looking to sag off the opposition's backline, and also kind of inviting that pressure, leaving quite a bit of space to run in behind. And I think that's a very smart tactic that Jose often used, looking to play the mind games with the opposition, encouraging them to flood men forward, trying to overrun this Porto side. And more times than not, the defense held out and they're able to counter and score on the opposition. Finally, we've got the likes of McCarthy, or again, the more physical, or not more physical, but the more pacey striker of the two. The support runs is set to balance. Now, you can also set it to wide, but I often find that the left striker then often drifts too far wide, and you don't really want that. You want the link-up play more centrally in certain moments. But with it set to balance, it provides a nice happy medium, often arcing the runs in and out of the box, but most importantly, getting in behind, looking to try and exploit that space that the opposition will more times not look to leave in behind. Of course, the left-sided centre-back was Carvalho, and he would often look to try and ping those balls in behind for the three forwards every now and then. The interceptions is set to aggressive, and then finally, just like I said with the right-sided striker, he's also set to come back on defense. Okay, so progressing on to the more defensive structure, I have dropped quite a few positions here, but if the opposition was looking to dominate the pace of play, looking to try and, you know, throw men forward, Jose would often invite that. Like I mentioned earlier, he would often invite that, allowing his team to drop a bit deeper, being a bit more compact, a bit more defensive, making sure that they are keeping their shape and their structure, not overly looking to press too much and leave players out of position. It was all about the structure of this side and making sure that the opposition were trying their damnedest to try and break it down. So more so, that's what I've gone with for this defensive outlet. For the formation going forward, it is still going to be a 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, but I have dropped certain players and their natural positions. Obviously, the two central midfielders, I've widened and dropped them into those wider, deeper central midfield positions, as well as the attacking midfielder. That is the lowest possible position that the attacking midfielder can still be registered as an attacking midfielder. And then, of course, the strikers as well, dropping them ever so slightly deeper. And this does help with the defensive outlet, like I say. So therefore, it would be 1 goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 1 DM, 2 central midfielders, 1 attacking midfielder, and then, of course, 2 strikers. Okay, so taking a look at the tactics. The tactical vision is still set to kick and rush. No major changes to that. But the defense and the defensive style is now changed. The drop-back approach is very much in tune with how this team would look to try and set out when they were looking to try and repel the opposition. Often, the whole team would drop deep, compact, fill in the lanes, make sure that the space in behind them was very minimal. And more so, the drop back effect has a very good positive defensive outlet to the side. The team width is still set to 10, but the depth now is set to 20. Like I said, looking to try and minimize the space between the backline and the goalkeeper, making sure that if the opposition had to play a ball in behind, it would actually have to be like the most perfect ball that player has ever played, or potentially the goalkeeper or the backline would just deal with it very effectively. The offense is still set to long ball with direct passing set to be on for them. And again, because you're compacting, you're inviting that pressure, it does leave a whole host of space in behind for your forwards to try and exploit, and obviously look to try and counter-attack as well. As for the width, it's set to 25, a bit more compact again. You're not looking to, break that compactness that much, especially when in possession of the ball. You won't have the ball as much, but what I will say is with this defensive outlet, it's very, very hard and frustrating to try and break down. Very Jose Mourinho, like you could say. The players in the box is set to 4, only really the 2 strikers breaking forward and getting into that attacking area, waiting for a potential cross or an early cross into that final phase of the field. Finally, the corners and the free kicks are still set to 4. Okay, so taking a look at the instructions, the goalkeeper as well as the 2 centre-backs are still set to the same, whereas the 2 full-backs have slightly changing roles. Their attacking runs are set to stay back. While attacking, they won't look to break forward as much, looking to try and keep the shape and the structure at the back very effectively. But if you do have the ball, they'll obviously have those more wider channels to run into and look to try and supply those early crosses or those through balls over the top for the opposition. Their run type is set to overlap. Again, it does help with the width of the field. You will look to try and compact as much as possible, and that does leave quite a bit of space down either channel. And then also the defensive position is set to stick to position. As you'll see here for the left back, same role and instructions as well. Into the central areas of the field, of course, your DM as well as your midfielders, they have the same role and instructions. Of course, they will be a lot more active in the deeper areas of your half, you could say, not looking to venture too far forward. And because you have also a very deep line, the 2 central midfielders won't get forward as much, keeping a very nice compact, almost back 7 at times. So as you'll see here for the left-sided midfielder as well as the right-sided midfielder, they've got the same roles and instructions, but the approach is slightly different. And of course, that does go in hand, and that does go hand in hand with the tactical approach. Moving on to the likes of Deco, again, a very similar role to what he had with the more balanced approach, but the interceptions is set to conservative, looking to, again, keep that shape, keep that structure, help out on the defensive end, not looking to chase the ball too much or pass or probe and try and win the ball back or intercept it. It's more so keep the shape, keep the structure, and eventually when the opposition, turn the ball over themselves or naturally make that mistake, they'll look to try and break on them. In terms of your front line, again, no super big changes to it apart from the right striker, you could say. His attacking runs has been changed from target man to mixed, allowing him to also use his pace every now and then to try and break him behind. And one other key feature and element that you will see is the interceptions is set to conservative, not overly looking to encourage the aggressive nature of trying to press the opposition's back line. As you'll see here for the left-sided striker, again, very similar to what they had before, also come back on defense for both of them, but the interceptions is set to conservative. So there you have it, guys. That is how I would replicate the famed Jose Mourinho Porto side. that obviously went on to win the Champions League many, many moons ago, and essentially created the legend of Jose Mourinho. So if you guys could let me know what you would rate the system out of 10, that would be absolutely great. Whilst you're there, hit the like button, leave other comments if you would like to. Anything I may have missed out, you guys can let me know. I always like to pin those very appreciated comments for other people to try and see as well. But my rating out of 10 would be a very good 9. I think going forward, sometimes every now and then you can be overloaded with the opposition, but the defensive structure, the capabilities of this team, and I genuinely think that you could take any team and, you know, use these exact same tactics and they would work very well. So yeah, that's why I say a 9. The adaptability is incredible. The defensive display is insane. The offensive outlet, slightly, you know, not the best, but I think there is enough there for you to generate a very good title-winning side with, like I say, any possible team you could think of. Anyways, my dudes, I hope you have enjoyed this video. And of course, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.